Overwatch is as much of a resource game as it is a simple hero shooter. In fact, you are concerned with managing your resources all the time. Time banks, number of teammates alive, ability cooldowns, and obviously friendly and enemy ultimates. What if I told you that there's a piece of software out there that does some of the thinking for you? What if I told you that this nebulous term of game sense can become less of an issue for you by simply installing said software? Something that's currently making waves in the community is the discussion surrounding Visor.gg and whether or not their offering can be considered cheating. Now, I'm not interested in the circumstances in which this has come to light. I'm also not interested in either condemning the developers of that software or anyone who's using it, because what's way more interesting to me is the philosophical aspect of whether or not this should be considered cheating. And don't be fooled for even a minute here, this is a very real discussion that is currently going on. It's not as cut and dry as to say that third-party tools displaying additional information for the player is a blatant cheat. Some players are not only defending the use of the software, they are even going as far as to blame Blizzard for its necessity. But before I get ahead of myself, let's talk about the nature of the information displayed on screen. In this screenshot, we can see that the overlay warns us of an upcoming enemy ultimate. It does not give us their exact location or anything, it is merely making us aware of the possibility that the enemy Pharah could use Barrage very soon. When you think about it, that doesn't seem all that bad, right? There's no surefire way of tracking ultimates. It is a wild card that's present in every game, and usually one has to simply assume that the enemies have their ultimates at all times. So getting a reminder on screen that this could be the case simply eliminates something that, quite frankly, is very annoying anyway, right? Well, Overwatch in its inclusive nature does not really have us do a heck of a lot, especially when we are playing in lower ranks, far away from what could be considered optimal play. I mean, there are a few characters who are very mechanically demanding, like Widowmaker and McCree for example. Personally, I caught myself tunnel visioning a lot while playing these heroes, neglecting the tracking of ultimates and even doing callouts of any kind. That is an issue that I don't have when playing Winston for example. Sure, there are things you can mechanically master, especially when it comes to Primal Rage, but I'm not very concerned with much of anything while playing him most of the time. Because I don't have to focus so much on the mechanical act of aiming or chaining and mastering abilities in quick succession, I can focus on a lot of very game sense intensive tasks. And yes, that includes tracking ultimates based on the damage I have been taking and being more aware of enemy positioning than on other heroes. Obviously, these kinds of things get easier the more you play. Once you develop a certain level of muscle memory, you can dedicate more of your brain capacity to do other things than aiming. But what this tells us is that game sense intensive actions are very much part of the core gameplay in a competitive environment. The reason that tracking ultimates is so important is because it affects the way we are playing. It affects our positioning, it affects our target priority, and it affects how we manage our own resources to deal with that possible threat. If you neglect tracking ultimates, and it's possible that you end up using all of your defense matrix as D.Va, leaving you without that crucial ability when the time comes to stop an enemy ultimate. So that little pop-up on screen can actually make a big difference. I mean, if you watched a number of my videos, you might have heard me talk about the core skill sets of Overwatch. The ideal player would be good at all the core skill sets including aiming, tracking, predicting, positioning, and decision making. But not every character requires all of these skills in equal amounts. We all know that Zarya is a very tracking intensive character, while Zenyatta requires it to be good at predicting enemy movement, and a hero like Mercy demands great awareness and decision making. Depending on which hero we play, we are not really required to be what I would consider an optimal Overwatch player. We just have to be good at the few things that are required for each of the heroes that we pick up respectively. That means that it is very well possible to come across players with really good aim in lower ranks, and that to the point where it makes you wonder how the hell they haven't been ranking up. Reason being the lack of a gating mechanism, or otherwise known as gameplay requirements, to achieve a high rank. There is nothing that demands that we have to have good aim and masters upwards, as much as there's nothing that demands that we have to have excellent game sense and diamond. Assuming you agree with what I've just laid out, we could come to the conclusion that this little pop-up on screen making us aware of enemy ultimates is actually a very big deal. It makes up for a skill set that a player would otherwise have to acquire during many hours of playtime. Because as you might know, there's really no tutorial on how to track ultimates. It's more of an experience-based thing. Very experienced players feel it in their groin when enough damage has been taken to make the threat of an enemy ultimate very possible. And that is something that can really only come from said experience. That means you can allocate brain capacity to doing other things than tracking ultimates. And it's not like this tool really assists you in your journey of getting better at tracking ultimates yourself. It's just a pop-up. It does the thinking for you. So when you rely on these pop-ups to adjust your gameplay accordingly, once it is taken away, you will be playing worse once again. And this is why, in my opinion, it is an unfair advantage that should not exist. I believe that it indeed is a form of cheating. Now, the counter argument to that is something I have also lamented for a very long time: the lack of tutorialization in Overwatch. The game never teaches us how to play the game in any meaningful way, and it's also terrible at giving us useful feedback. There is no replay system, gold medals are a meme, and Blizzard adamantly refuses to set a gameplay standard that players can agree on and refer to at times of dispute. Now, based on what I see on Visor.gg, the tool does in fact give meaningful feedback in some aspects. For example, it makes you aware of when your healers die early in teamfights. That is then a problem that you can immediately resolve by playing more defensively or dedicating a player to peeling for your supports. It could make a positive impact on the gameplay experience of many, but if I look at all the stat tools it provides, it is my belief that we're ending up with the same meme that is overbuff, oversumo, and whatever else exists out there. I don't believe that a player who is dedicated to improving their gameplay over improving their rank is in need of any of these kinds of statistics. From a gameplay perspective, Overwatch is not a difficult video game for a seasoned gamer. I very much doubt that most players will be able to properly interpret those stats in any meaningful way, rather than fueling their egos and ending up focusing on the wrong things once again. So in conclusion, yes, tools like that have the means to pick up the slack in some aspects that Blizzard is most definitely neglecting. As a post-match analysis tool, this would be absolutely phenomenal, and if properly developed, could make private, low-rank coaching unnecessary while helping players to improve on an individual basis. But the fact that it is an in-game overlay means that it is affecting the player's gameplay in real time. It is taking us by the hand, telling us what to do, and making sure we don't have to waste time developing a proper level of game sense. And that is not only an unfair advantage from a competitive standpoint, but it also does not necessarily help a player in the long run, as it creates a dependency for those pop-ups over meaningfully affecting their gameplay over time. But that's already all I have to say on the matter, so now it's your turn. Do you believe that using this tool equates to cheating, or is it a worthwhile addition for players who have trouble improving their gameplay? Feel free to sound off down in the comment section below. But until then, thank you everybody so much for watching. Don't forget to drop me a like on your way out if you enjoyed the video, subscribe if you want to see more, and maybe share this video with a friend you think would find it interesting. Thanks again for watching, and I hope to see you all next time.